So today we're making beer. Have everything here we need, and I've written the instructions. The original instructions I got with the kit were virtually incomprehensible, so I've rewritten everything down there. The first step, clean everything here thoroughly. I've already done that. Step 2, we're going to dissolve this, which is our malt extract mix, that's the yeast, into boiling water. This stuff smells so good. I don't know if you can see that, but it's still steaming. Alright. Look how thick that is. Now, it's not a big deal if you don't get everything out of the can, because we're going to go back and get the rest of it in a minute. And this is very full. Now, you want to get rid of the excess in the can. Easiest way to do that, mix in some warm water, a little bit at a time, because you got to get this up to pretty high. It's kind of hard to see, but you have to fill the fermenter about 4 inches, and that's important to note, because you need space for the foam to build up, and you don't want it building up in your airlock. You need to fill it 4 inches from the top at 23 degrees. So we need a thermometer. I have this handy little one. And that was cleaned as well. 61 Celsius. So we need to add cool water. Now, the temperature isn't really imperative at this point. You just want it cool enough that the yeast will be active. Yeast is only active between a few degrees, but it's not quite that specific. I believe it's anywhere from 16 to 32 degrees. Most yeast is at its most active. So we're just going to let this sit as it is until this drops down to about 30 degrees. And then I'll be back. When I clean this, you can use regular bleach, but you really have to wash it thoroughly, or else it will kill the yeast real quick. What I use is this. It's called Santa Brew, and it's designed really for wines, but I mean, it'll work. It doesn't, in trace amounts, it won't kill the yeast like bleach will, so it's much safer. All right, it's cooled down, not quite as much as I'd like, but enough where I can start doing the rest of the stuff to it. Basically, there's really not much left. Something I learned that they don't really tell you in the instructions for these things is add the yeast to a little bit of water and let it sit for just a few minutes until it starts to do its yeasty thing. yeast does two things. One, it activates the yeast. It makes it work a little bit better. And two, yeast is very resilient, but dry yeast does have a shelf life. And usually that's 6 months to a year. So if your yeast has been sitting, it may have died. So doing this will allow you to see if your yeast is still okay. This is not your standard table sugar. This is dextrose. And it is what I would recommend. It's what most people recommend for brewing beer. You can use standard sugar, but it's not that great to work with. Yeast don't like it all that much. The water's still warm enough that this should dissolve fairly easily. Right, that looks good. So we add this. Alright, let that do its thing. And then we just got the lid. Got our airlock. Usually I'd put boiling water in the airlock, but just going to fill it with some really, really hot tap water, which it'll work just as well. There's 2 marks on here, and it's not really that important to fill it right to those marks, but I just prefer that. That'll do. It gives me an idea of where the water's moving, how the water's moving. Sometimes with the changing in temperature between the cold air and the warm water, it will actually cause the pressure to backflow into the fermenter. It doesn't look like that's going to happen this time, but it could take as long as 3 or 4 hours for it to happen, so keep an eye on it. It's going to sit in the fermenter for 3 to 5 days usually, and you'll know it's done when the bubbles stop flowing through the airlock. One last thing, everything you see behind me here to do with the beer comes from the soda shop. You could pause it there if you want, but it's in a little strip plaza on Kingston Road, south of Lawrence. It's a little difficult to find. It's actually on the north side of the road. But if you look it up, sodacenter.com, CENTRE. I'm sure they have instructions to get there. But it's the greatest place I've found in Toronto to get beer stuff. So if you're interested and you're sort of in the eastern end of Toronto, go for it.